Hello, thank you all for joining us this afternoon or morning if you happen to be on the West Coast. This session is engaging with patrons, library programs outside library space, and we're really excited to have John, Renew, and Nicole here talking a little bit about their programs. They will be saving time for questions at the end. So if you have questions that you want to ask them, you are welcome to put them in the chat as we're going along, and I'll save those for the end. Or once they conclude, you are welcome to raise your hand and you can unmute and ask your question out loud. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to John to get things started.
All right, thank you, Corey. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me share my screen here. So I'm John Moreland. I am the Student Services Librarian at Indiana University. I will have been the Student Services Librarian for a whole year coming up on July 1st. So it's very exciting. I'm actually only the second Student Services Librarian at IU, which is interesting because I think that the whole position of Student Services Librarian in law libraries is a relatively new thing. And I kind of hope that that position really grows in law schools. So my presentation, I'm just going to go over a couple of law library community projects that we do with the law students. And I honestly, full disclosure, I can't take full credit for these two projects. These were the ideas of my predecessor, Kim Mattioli, who I took over as Student Services Librarian last year. But I did decide to keep them because they were very, very popular with our law students. So our first community project, outreach project, is the Habitat for Humanity home builds. And I just have a couple of pictures here to kind of demonstrate. If any of you have participated in Habitat for Humanity home builds, you know that you really, really get your hands dirty. It's not a mere kind of helping out tangentially with the builders. Like, you really get into the heavy, hard work, whether that's actually putting on a roof or actually laying a foundation. We typically do our home builds in the middle of October, so the perfect fall weather period of the year. Not too hot, not too cold, very comfortable. It is an all-day thing, but the law library does provide lunch for the students and the Habitat for Humanity staff. We typically get 15 to 20 students. Obviously, in 2020, we didn't have it, but then the following year, there was a slight uptick. I think probably because students were ready to, get back to, being with each other and doing, community projects like this. The one thing that, I have noticed coming out of these home builds is the students who participate and volunteer. I do see them in their faces in the library afterwards. So I think it also tends to kind of build that law library community with the students, which is great. Our other project is the community kitchen. Monroe County, of course, is the county in which Indiana University Bloomington is located, and their mission is to eliminate hunger. We typically do this project in February. The community kitchen has a max of 15 individuals per shift. It's a 3-hour shift that includes, preparing the food, cooking the food, serving the food to the individuals, and then, of course, helping clean up. It's about 25 to 30 individuals who are experiencing food insecurity that we serve. And in 2022, the demand among the law students to come and volunteer was so overwhelming that we actually had to add a second shift, which was very, very encouraging. It was an awesome turnout. Students love it. So I think that both of these programs do a great job at satisfying and meeting two particular ADA standards. One is 303B3, related to the development of a professional identity. So, if you think about it, when the law students, they graduate, they pass the bar, they go out into the practice of law, they will be in the service of other people, right? So whether they become public servants as public defenders or prosecutors, or even if they, hang up their own shingle, as it were, serving their, clients, or even, quite frankly, if they go to work for a Fortune 500 company, they will be in the service of somebody else, right? We all know that lawyering is a service-oriented profession. And I think that, these two programs, they provide a great hands-on tactile experience and really driving home and reinforcing that service-oriented mindset that I really hope that our law students are developing as a part of their professional identity. And also, there is the 303C standard, education to law students on bias, cross-cultural competency, and racism. Again, I think it does a great job, both programs, the Habitat for Humanity Build and the Community Kitchen, does a great job at illustrating, giving a tactile experience on how cultural bias and racism are really ingrained and are a couple of underpinnings in home insecurity, housing insecurity, and food insecurity. And I think a lot of these students, they may very well be trying to meet these challenges firsthand as attorneys. And so to give them that one-on-one personal interaction with those issues, I think is a great experience. Cannot be overstated. So those are our two community outreach programs that we do at IU. Again, very, very popular amongst our law students. And I really do think that they will remain very popular in the years to come. I think that's all I had. Thank you very much. And I'll hand it over to Renu.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Renu Sagria, and I am presently still an MLIS student, and I'm in a kind of transitionary phase. I'm working for an immigration solo at the moment, but I'm also maintaining a mediation practice on the side. But at the moment, I'm searching for full-time law librarian positions. However, from fall of 2020 to spring of for the fall 2021, fall 2020 to spring 2021 semester, and part of the fall 2021 semester, I worked as a reference law librarian at Western State College of Law, and it is a small ABA accredited law school in Irvine, California, and Orange County. And as part of that role, my supervisors, had my fellow reference law librarian, I create a monthly brown bag skills programs. And basically, right off the bat, when I started at Western State in the fall 2020 semester, which was a very interesting time to launch a career in law librarianship, I instantly thought that, when we were lost, or when many of us were law students, a common gripe was that so much of what we learn in the classroom is so it's so theoretical. We don't learn a lot of nuts and bolts practical skills. In a lot of law schools, you can go all 3 years without having spoken to a single client. That wasn't the case at my alma mater, Drexel University Thomas kind of school in Philadelphia, we were required to do at least one clinic or one co-op, which is kind of like a 4-credit externship. But unfortunately, a lot of, recent law school graduates are suddenly like flung into full-time work settings after graduation, where they feel like they're woefully unprepared because they don't have a lot of nuts and bolts practical skills that maybe they should have learned in law school. And I felt like it was important to fill this gap. So personally, like I'm trilingual. I grew up learning Hindi and English side by side. So it was just it was a huge advantage to me to have that upbringing, because I felt like picking up subsequent languages was pretty, it came pretty readily to myself and my older brother, who is also trilingual in Hindi, English, and Spanish. So, 5th grade, I started learning Spanish in school. And continued throughout middle school and high school. I minored in the subject in college, and I just felt like I was good at it, but also it was such a useful skill. And when I got to law school, I noticed that at a lot of legal internships in law school, or doing externships or pro bono works, you'd come into contact with litigants or clients who are limited English proficient. And you may know that Latinos are perhaps one of the largest growing minority populations in the United States, and there is a great need for Spanish-speaking not only attorneys but legal professionals as well, such as secretaries and paralegals and interns. And I found that as a law student that had these language skills, it was a huge boon to me in the job search. And I feel like a lot of law students are really wanting to learn these skills, because it's just, it does give a competitive edge on the job market, but it's also a good thing to have have linguistic and cultural competency. So basically, I definitely, back in like September of 2020, when my supervisor had asked me to consider a program, I proposed this right off the bat, and they were very much down with the idea. Let me just hold on. I'm going to share my screen and just open up the PowerPoint. I just have a couple of visuals. Can you all see this? Okay, good. I'll go to full screen. Okay. Spanish for law students and virtual citizenship clinic. So I proposed the Spanish for law students early on in the year. And, back when I was a law student, just like walking through the stacks in the library, I was just like, I'm pursuing law librarianship, I'm kind of nerdy. So like I might, pour through the stacks and like find a book that catches my eye. And even if it has nothing to do with any of my classes, I might pick it up and check it out. And one of them was Español para Abogados, or Spanish for Lawyers, by Profesora Ortiz. And back when I was a law student, I had spotted this on the shelf just like wandering through the law library, and I found it to be captivating, and I checked it out, and I poured through it. And Profesora Ortiz has been like a great mentor to me throughout this process. She's very knowledgeable, but also down to earth and friendly. And I've talked to her a couple of times, like in the process of developing this program. She's super helpful. She even sent out a nice, a teacher's manual in PDF form. So she is really a wonderful resource to lean on. But she published back in 2012 the first case book on Spanish for lawyers. It's been over a decade, so I'd be curious to see if she plans to publish a new edition of it. But she has been an incredible resource, and it's divided into various chapters on different like legal subject areas, and there's a pretty detailed glossary in the back. So this is just a great resource in terms of like collection development. Another one I highly recommend is Spanish for Attorneys and Paralegals by William S. Harvey. I don't have a hard copy of this right now. A friend of mine actually is borrowing it because she is working at a small firm, and she finds it to be very helpful. And she, like me, learned Spanish in school. But anyway, this is a super helpful Spanish legal dictionary and phrase book, but it also has various exercises like fill-ins and things like that to gauge your comprehension. This is a a resource that I highly recommend in terms of collection development, and building like a working collection of books on Spanish legal terminology, phrase books, dictionaries, things like that. Again, for collection development, when I was at Western State, I managed the Instagram page, and I felt like this was an important part of publicity. Again, like Western State is in Southern California with a very, it was very heavily, has a very sizable Latino population. Western State itself is quite diverse. About 1 in 3 students are Latino. A lot of them are first or second generation immigrants themselves. So, even if a lot of them were heritage speakers, they may have not picked up this technical legal terminology, like, talking at home with their family, they might have not been using words like bench warrant. So even if they're heritage speakers, it was educational for them too. I mean, I learned Spanish in the context of middle, high school, and college, and there are just a lot of words in these phrase books and dictionaries that even I didn't know that weren't covered in those traditional mainstream college and high school Spanish classes. So in fall of 2021, I highlighted some of the items in our collection that could help students wanting to beef up their legal Spanish, whether they're just wanting to do it for their own edification, or if they are doing an externship or something and they are working with Spanish-speaking litigants or clients. So definitely recommend this in terms of publicity. If you already have items in your collection, definitely use your IG accounts or Facebook accounts to publicize them. Social media outreach, I began in fall of 2020, even though the series that both me and my co-reference law librarian did would take place in the spring semester. But, this was just kind of the first feeler I put out on the Instagram page saying like, hey, this is what we're going to introduce. All levels are welcome. And I also, in the fall of 2020 semester, I sent out a SurveyMonkey survey. Thankfully, the institution I was working for, Western State, had like a free SurveyMonkey premium. So I was able to, send out these surveys, gauging their interest, gauging their levels, whether they, learned in high school or college, or whether they're a heritage speaker, just to see like what kind of topics they're interested in. And, it generated a lot of interest. Like fall 2020, spring 2021, it was all remote, the classes, but like students could come to the library on campus, they can make appointments and things like that. So if I ran into students in person, it would definitely talk it up. I would post flyers around to publicize it. So yeah, flyer and social media outreach. In January of 2021, I put out this flyer with all of the dates, information on how to register, things like that. And then this is another recruitment flyer. So this is for a program related to Spanish for lawyers. So not everyone who volunteered at this necessarily attended all of the sessions, but attending the sessions leading up to it would certainly help. So actually starting in, I want to say January of 2021, or it could have been actually late December 2020. I had reached out to Oscar Teran. He's right now at Southwestern Career Services, but that time he was at Western State in their Career Services office. And what's interesting that he attended UC Hastings, I guess it's now UCSF Law School, and he was actually taught a 4-credit course, Spanish for Lawyers, taught by Victoria Ortiz, the professor I showed you on the second slide. And I just thought, oh, what a twist of fate. It's like, I had been speaking to her for some time about like how to develop a curriculum for this course. And it just wild that I ran into a staff person working at the school who was taught by the professor who wrote this wonderful case book. It was just serendipitous or something. And he said that like he would be very happy to help coordinate outreach and, logistics and things like that. And because he's in career services, he knows what recent alums are up to. So he learned that in Catholic Charities of Orange County, which they provide a lot of different social services, but one of them is immigration legal services to indigent or low-income litigants. They found out that, Demis Camacho Esquire was a 2019 grad of Western State, now working as a full-time staff attorney at this local nonprofit. It's based in Santa Ana, California, which is 80% Latino. So this organization, again, like provides immigration legal services to non-citizens who cannot otherwise afford an attorney, because unfortunately, unlike in criminal law where there's the Gideon case from 1963, in immigration law there is no right to counsel. So this is definitely an access to justice issue that touches upon the ABA rules that John discussed. The consequences of messing up an immigration case can be really, really high. Like, you could be deported to a country that's dangerous for you to return to. It's even if the stakes are almost as serious as in a criminal case, so many low-income immigrants, they go it alone. And apparently a survey from a couple years ago said that 80% of the legal needs of the poor are unmet. Santa Ana is a pretty, it's more of like a working class city. So there's a great need for this, and, got good feedback from this. And Oscar from Career Services, he helped immensely in recruiting for this. And I'm really glad that he got me in touch with this alum who works at the school, because, not only does this, service learning program allow the students to get pro bono hours and learn practical skills, but they can also network with a recent alum who might be doing the kind of work they want to do in the future. So, definitely take advantage of your IG accounts. This was 2020 to 2021, and naturally, because of lockdowns and pandemic, students are scrolling on their phone a lot more often. So I thought might as well take advantage of it and do a lot of social media outreach. This post was, I think, in January of 2021. So as of 2020, AILA now offers free student membership. I am really jealous of current law students in that respect, because AILA has amazing resources, including Kurzban's Immigration Law Sourcebook, which is one of the best, pretty much the best secondary source in immigration, that you get free access to the e-version. So I strongly encourage students, not only in Spanish for lawyers, but in general, to, take advantage of this if you're even remotely interested in immigration law, because as this caption indicates, it provides so many free resources to students that I didn't have when I was a law student in the mid 2010s. And then in terms of publicity for it, Oscar Turan very graciously offered to write an article for Orange County Lawyer magazine, which was published in May of 2021, The Power of Being Understood, Producing the Next Generation of Multilingual Attorneys. I'm just really, I took part in editing or just looking over it and providing feedback, but it was Oscar who really did the legwork on this. And I'm quoted in the article. So I'm just proud that if you, look up my last name on Westlaw and this article pops up. But this, explain a lot of the things I've talked about how, just kind of serendipitous that Oscar Turan was taught by the same professor who wrote this casebook that I just somehow ran into while I was a law student, and how we worked together to develop a wonderful community partnership with a local nonprofit that just so happened to have hired a relatively recent alum working there. And it was such a personally meaningful experience for not only the students but myself. I'm a U.S. citizen by birth, but my parents and brother, they became naturalized in 2000. So I'm a second generation immigrant, and I feel it's just personally resonant and rewarding to me to do this kind of work. And Western State has a pretty high proportion of students who are themselves immigrants, or they might be DACA recipients as well. There are students who are a lot who are second generation immigrants. So to a lot of students, this was not only gaining practical skills and that would make them marketable, but it's also it's helping out people who are in their shoes or in their parents' shoes. And it was just, it's more than just getting practical skills. It's an affective response. So I just found it super rewarding. And then moving on into fall of 2021, again, highlighting diversity reads is another thing. This isn't as much related to the program from the previous semester, but this book in particular, which I wanted to highlight during Hispanic Heritage Month, it did talk about cases of Mexican Americans in the law that pertain to language access, which is really important. And again, being a pro se litigant can be extremely stressful. If you are limited English proficient, it just adds another layer of anxiety to navigate this very labyrinthine system. And yeah, talked about the community outreach again. I think just like with what John mentioned, it's a good idea to partner with local nonprofits because like they are probably swamped with clients who need help and there's just like not enough hands to help. So it was super rewarding that, you know, we were able to set up this virtual citizenship clinic. Again, this was March of 2021. Like not everyone was, most people weren't fully vaccinated then. So I thought like to play it safe, let's do it virtually. Like if someone got sick with COVID because of an in-person event I organized, I like wouldn't forgive myself for that. So I decided, you know, just to be as careful as possible. We did do it over Zoom, and it started off with a training of about an hour in which Demis Camacho, the staff attorney, talked about the ins and outs of naturalization law, went through the N400 form from USCIS and trained students on how to interview clients and fill out that form. Then each of us, including myself as well, we were put into breakout rooms and paired up with an actual client whom we interviewed and filled out this form, USCIS N400, and you know the staff attorney, Demis Camacho, and a BIA accredited representative, Jesus Bampa, were on the call, you know, just to answer any questions. If students needed clarification or if some issue comes up, they were there to provide adequate supervision because, you know, these are law students and I'm not barred in California. So of course we need to be supervised by an attorney. That's important. But yeah, that was just a run through of, you know, the program. I think there is really a great need for Spanish speaking legal professionals. It's only going to increase. And you know, not only does this offer opportunities for skills training and, you know, developing competencies, but for so many students who are from immigrant backgrounds or, you know, are limited or formerly limited English proficient, it can be so personally meaningful for them. So thank you very much. And I look forward to your questions at the end.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Belbin, the Associate Dean for Library and Information Resources at Western New England University School of Law Library. And I'm going to be speaking about two programs today. The first one, can you see my Intro to Law program? The first one is Intro to Law, which was a partnership, not with a nonprofit, but with the public school, the Paulo Freire Social Justice Charter School. And we got involved with that because one of our admissions people had taken a tour of the campus and they came back and said, you know, we're trying to get a program up with the school. Would the library be interested in being part of it? Well, as we always say yes to everything in the library, it ended up that we actually spearheaded the program because we were able to make the biggest time commitment and content programming commitment to the program. And so we ended up actually being more of the centerpiece as opposed to just having one little piece of the program. And so we began planning the fall of 2021 with the folks from the charter school. And we worked really closely with them on what it was they were looking for in a program and, you know, what any learning outcomes they wanted from the program. From the library's side of things, what we were looking to do was to really connect with as many law students as we could, and you know, in a non-reference type transaction, so that they would feel comfortable coming to us for other things. One thing, their dean of students, who we work closely with, and their librarian, the dean of students was a very big ideas person. And so we did have to set realistic goals as to what we were able to achieve with our resources and our size of staff, which is pretty small. So that was like one of our first things, because they were shooting for the sun, I would say, but we did come up with a great program. And besides getting the students comfortable with us, we are always looking to sneak in those reference research skills, right? So we were able to do that as well. And the program was really well received by everyone. I just threw a little quote up here from their librarian about the program. And I'll talk about the benefits that we realized a little bit. So what did the program look like? We had planned it to be a soft rollout. Basically, it would be a one semester program where their students came over to the law school once a month for 2 hours. And we also had planned for us to go over there. And then it was going to be, they would have the research project that at the end, they would then do a big presentation. We would go over to the presentation and see that at their school. They were very proud. They have it was almost closet size, but they did have a little moot court room there. And so they were very excited to show us their facilities. And then would culminate in the end of year celebration that would be over at the law school, and their parents and administrators and everyone would be invited to that. We even invited the mayor, who unsurprisingly had something else to do, but we did invite a lot of people. Our goal and what we thought we could do would be 15 high school students. And we planned the activities that we planned included a scavenger hunt it was supposed to be of the entire law school, but as librarians were the ones who were planning it, it did end up being a little bit heavy on the library aspect of things. But we did, make quite a bit of use of the moot court room that we have. And we did a lot of activities in there as much as we could. And also our Center for Social Justice, we made sure that we did tours of that as well. We also participated in a mock law class, which is always, we have one of our really great fun professors do that, and the students really enjoy that. So we had the librarians participated in the class alongside the students. So when there was group work, we were interacting with the students in that capacity, as well as our law students were in that as well. And the other great thing that our law students participated in besides research was really the student panel. And it was great. The high school students got to ask questions about law school, and the law students were really focused on making sure the high school students felt comfortable knowing that they could also come to law school, that it is hard but doable. So they were realistic about the time demands, I will say that. And then since we were spearheading, we said, okay, we're going to be the centerpiece for this. We each session at least an hour of the 2 hours that they were over here, we were going to do a research piece. And so we were really wanting it to be engaging, which we know even law students sometimes, for some reason unknown to me, do not find that research can be exciting, but we all know how exciting it is. So we wanted to get them in on the research excitement early on. And so we said, let's have topics that they're interested in. So we said they'll pick their topics. Whatever they want, we'll figure it out somehow. And so we had envisioned that we will pair up our law students with something they're interested in that the students picked. Of course, when we get to challenges, we'll talk about how things ended up actually going. But so we decided, we could try to do 2 law students and 1 to 2 of the high school students together and as a group, and then they could feed off of each other with their ideas. And some of the topics the students picked, criminal law, that was a big topic, adoption, court procedures, which I thought, wow, they they don't know a lot about, it's like, oh, that wasn't that interesting to me, but we did our best with that. Gun laws, of course, that's really big in the news. Business law, again, I was a little surprised by that one. Immigration, so we have some budding immigration lawyers coming up. And we relied heavily on free resources, and whether or not this was accurate information from Lexis, but we reached out to both Lexis and Westlaw and said, hey, we're doing this program. Would you, do you think it's okay for us to give out registrations just for this time frame for the students? Westlaw was on board with that. So they said, hey, they're connected with the school, that's fine. But Lexis did not let us use registrations, but they did support the program with lots of swag and, provided snacks and things like that. But we really didn't end up using Westlaw that much. We used a lot of free resources that they could access from home, from their school. And of course, we relied heavily on the trial court law libraries and their great informational sites. And then we also identified appropriate resources for their librarian to be able to assist them when they were over there at their school working on the projects. And then we also made a patron record for the librarian because, part of the planning, like, oh, maybe they'll want to check out a book. They won't have time to look through it here. Would we want the students checking them out? We got a little nervous and decided on, we'll let their librarian be responsible for the resources. So we made their librarian a patron record, and they didn't end up checking out anything, but we were prepared in the event that they did want to do something. We tried to really be thoughtful about what scenarios could come up. And then we also wanted, as for the librarian's part, we purchased the NOLO, which you can't see because of my background here. The NOLO, legal research, how to find and understand the law, which I love the NOLOs because they're very understandable. And we thought this is a great resource that we bought 1 copy for the library and a copy for each student. And then also we purchased, we wanted to purchase a book to give out at the celebration. And so we gave a few ideas out to their librarian and said, pick what you would like the students to have. And so she settled on The Color of Law. So we gave that out to each of the students as well. And as I mentioned, Lexis was very generous with their snacks, not the snacks themselves, the money. So I went and purchased the snacks and lots of swag. And then between admissions, the law school admissions, undergrad admissions, and what we had hanging around the library, we were always giving out items. So that was really great. And then career services. So for us, the first year, career services was going through a transition where we were getting 2 new people, and our whole department is 2 people, so they really didn't participate the first year, but we did wrap them in this past year, and they were fabulous. They did a really great job. And we went over to the school a couple of times, but we did the research here in the library, but we also tried to expose them to every part of the law school as well. Some challenges. This is the fun stuff, right? So student schedules. So we had so many more students that wanted to participate. We had 19 students that were interested, law students that were interested in volunteering. And because we were really having to stick to the charter school schedule and for their students, we only ended up with 10 volunteers, which was still great, but then there's really no way we could get around not having to stick to their schedule. So that was disappointing for some of the law students who wanted to get involved because they understood the importance of these types of programs. And we were lucky to secure that they were able to get pro bono credits for their helping in the program. So that was another, I think, great added benefit for the law library. This is the first time we were able to help out with that. Student absences on both sides were really hard. So we did some tweaking after that. Even snow days were thrown in there, being in Springfield, Massachusetts. And then this terrible thing happened this year. With some internal issues with the school, the state actually revoked their charter. So at the end of this school year, they are no longer going to be a school. So that really threw a monkey wrench into our program for going forward, and totally out of our control. We did not see that coming. And so I've been spending this since January pretty much putting feelers out to all the other schools in the area. And I'm happy to say that for next year, unfortunately with this group, but for other schools, we're going to be working with tailoring programming to the needs of their schools. And even we're getting a local firm involved as well. So we're expanding in different ways. With the student absences, we ended up tweaking it so that it is not a culminating into a full presentation at the end, which we only ended up seeing 2 presentations out of all of the students that participated. So that piece where we decided we're going to change that. And we went with 3 very discrete sessions. First, we did the legislature and focused on statutes. Then we did judiciary and focused on cases, and then the executive branch and regulations. And so we tied that into their whatever the same topics that they wanted. We made sure our students felt comfortable helping them find something on their topic in each of those areas. So that's really our piece with our law students, was training them on how to find information, guiding people on their research path. And then we tried to be hands-off but available so that they felt comfortable. And we also, because we wanted them to ask us questions and not just make things up along the way, that we told them that we wanted them to model great behavior and ask questions and feel comfortable asking questions. So we tied a lot in there. And I think we really had some great strides with the students as well. Another issue, we tried to use Teams, Microsoft Teams, as a place where we would have resources for our law students. They did not know how to use Teams, so that was really difficult. We scrapped that pretty quickly. They also weren't good at tracking their timing for their pro bono requirements. So I had to keep going back and seeing who was present at one session. So that ate up a little bit of time. But it was all well worth it because some of the benefits, obviously the increased research skills that our students were able to get, and the exposure to all these resources that they had no idea about. Even if we had mentioned them during 1L, they, it just went in one ear and out the other because they had too many other things going on. They were able to earn the pro bono credits and really start establishing that professional identity. So excited that we had at least one student was now interested in law librarianship, and she reached out to me, and I talked to her about things. And that was all just because they don't realize all the great things that we get to do as librarians. And so having them see that, I think, was really great. And another thing to show our value, I think, is that 3 of the seniors from their program are going to be our incoming class in the 3 and 3 program. So that was really great. And especially since our university president is huge on community outreach. So that just, we're just always trying to show how the library can be of value. And sometimes it's not in the traditional ways that they are thinking. And just wrapping up with, one of the ways we are valuable is that we can help satisfy these requirements. And so then what's next for us besides working with these 4 schools? After having met Renu and learning about her Spanish for lawyers, I have grabbed onto that idea, and we're working on a Spanish for lawyers for our students for this coming fall. And because of the Intro to Law program, one of our volunteer students, I found out that she is a Spanish teacher in the elementary schools. And so I was able to recruit her to help work on curriculum, and she's getting credit as a research assistant for that. So I just see so many positives come out of this program, including that we were lucky recipients as one of the 2023 AALL Excellence in Community Engagement Awards. So again, now I can say that to the university president, which is so exciting. And so we really would love for everyone to take these ideas and make them your own. Of course, how we do them doesn't work for everyone. So however you envision it, it's fabulous. And we're happy to answer any questions. So I will stop sharing my screen, and I think we'll open up for questions.
Thank you so much to our 3 speakers. So for all of you in attendance, you are welcome to, if you have a question, you can go ahead and raise your hand and we'll have you unmute yourself and ask it out loud. Otherwise, you can drop questions in the chat too. So do we have any questions from our group? Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Ariel Scotis. I'm from the D'Angelo Law Library at the University of Chicago. I'm very curious with respect to the Habitat for Humanity home build and the Monroe County Community Kitchen. How did that relationship start? I think you mentioned your predecessor had sort of laid the groundwork for that, but I'm really curious if you have any suggestions or thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think what Ken Mattioli did was, she was really just looking for opportunities for the law students to engage with the community. And Habitat for Humanity is obviously a very well-known community outreach program. And of course, food pantries or, food community kitchens. I think she just literally just went out, did some research, and kind of set this thing up as a long-term project for the students. So it's just a matter of doing your research and seeing what is out in the community that you and your law students can take advantage of.
Are there any other questions from the attendees at this point? I'm not seeing any in there, but I just wanted to ask Nicole in particular, if you have suggestions on how to get started with this program, like what people might want to look into first.
Yep. So for us, since we have the focus on social justice, that school reached out to the law school. So if you have, I would start with the area, the schools that are close around, and every school I've contacted has said yes. They're all huge on wanting to get their students into the universities. And so I have had no resistance from anyone. Just, you know, we've been very receptive to like, what would you like to see? And obviously working off of research, you know, like here's something that we could do as research. And also that the Paolo Freire school specifically wanted to get a good foundation on the 3 branches of government, how they interact. A school we're going to be working with in the fall, they actually have an intro to law class that they do. And so we're going to help them with their research projects. So they already have something well developed, and they specifically said our students have a good foundation on the 3 branches of government. And so we don't even have to really cover that. So I think just reaching out, if they have a dean of students or someone, or even the principal, or some of them have academic coordinators. I think that's who I've been talking to a lot, but we're very lucky. We have they're 6 to 12 now school right across the street, and they're always wanting to do stuff with us. So we're very lucky in our geography that way, which you don't often hear about Springfield, Massachusetts, but it definitely works for us.
Thanks, Nicole. Ariel, did you have another question?
I do. I don't mean to hog up the time, but I was curious about the virtual citizenship clinic. I guess one concern I would have with doing a virtual clinic is if people have access, right, to Zoom or to, you know. So I guess I'm curious, given the population, right? How did you bridge that potential gap, or sort of how did you navigate that?
So as I mentioned during the presentation, Oscar Turan from Career Services introduced me to Denise Camacho from Catholic Charities of Orange County, and this nonprofit organization focuses on outreach to, you know, low-income clients, many of whom are limited English proficient, and of course, in this case, they're all seeking pro bono immigration legal services. So, you know, these clients, you know, reached out to Catholic Charities of Orange County, whether, you know, they walked into their office physically, or, you know, called their hotline, or reached out otherwise to this organization. So, you know, during the course of spring of 2021, Denise Camacho, the attorney who was training myself and the students, as well as Jesus Pompa, who is a BIA accredited rep, like basically like a non-attorney who can provide immigration legal services. You know, they were in the process of like doing community outreach, like whatever they could do, you know, in person in like winter of 2021. They were able to do that. And then, you know, I'm not privy to the conversations that my students had with their whichever client that they were paired up with. I mean, my client, he was joining the Zoom call in the breakout room from his car, like, and he was obviously on his phone, and you know, that was convenient for him. And you know, I was, you know, it was on a Saturday afternoon. Actually, I thought, you know, that would be most convenient time for clients. So normally I didn't work on Saturdays, but my schedule was changed around to be as convenient as possible to these clients who are, you know, they're working class, low income, seekers of immigration legal services, particularly naturalization. So, you know, my the client that I was paired up with, he is a national of Mexico, and you know, he was I went through the forum with him and everything, but you know, it was they tried to meet clients, they meaning Catholic Charities of Orange County, where they are. In some cases, like if a client did not have had like, you know, spotty phone access or internet access or something, like they could go into the Catholic Charities physical office and, you know, do the Zoom interview from there. Like, given the client population is fairly you know, disadvantaged socioeconomically or racially, and in terms of language access, you know, they really made an effort to, you know, do outreach in as many ways as possible. So in terms of like recruiting the clients, which would be interviewed by myself and my students, you know, the Catholic Charities of Orange County, our nonprofit partner, did a lot of that legwork. Myself and Oscar Turan, we focused on, doing outreach to the students, whether through email blasts or social media, and again, like I did the Spanish for Lawyers monthly brown bag series also over Zoom. Again, we wanted to play it safe. It was spring of 2021. So, I wanted there to be like an access to justice component of this because, the skills and vocabulary that they were learning, for each of the monthly sessions, they could apply, to an actual client who needs legal help. And, it just may have difficulties accessing it due to socioeconomic reasons or, limited English proficiency. So yeah, that was just kind of the process of, how largely our nonprofit partner was able to do outreach to these clients. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
We have just a couple of minutes left. I wanted to see if there were any remaining questions from the group. And Renu also shared a link to a Spectrum article that's in the chat, so you might want to grab that before this session closes. If there's no additional questions, I just want to see if there was anything the speakers wanted to add since we've got a couple of minutes left before we close out.
I guess just like one thing that I'd overlooked during my speaking parts is that in addition to these monthly brown bag sessions, which were held over Zoom, with each of them focusing on different area of the law, whether it's immigration, family, criminal, I also created an asynchronous component through Duolingo for schools. Some of you may have the free language learning app Duolingo. It's a wonderful app, and educators can set up an account for Duolingo through schools and assign activities to their students, monitor their students' progress. It's good for, students to be accountability buddies with one another because, if it's important for them to practice their skills in between the live monthly sessions. So I do think like if you're doing a program like this, I do recommend an asynchronous component. And then like, this was not a 4-credit course or anything. So like while I did give suggested readings for them. Of course, they're not being graded for it, but sometimes, I would go online and find brochures about legal services or legal issues, like know your rights types brochures that are in Spanish, and say like, hey, before our next meeting, maybe you should read this brochure on how to file for divorce, which is written in Spanish, just to get us talking about something. But again, it's not a 4-credit thing. But for each session, we started off with like a review of vocabulary. We did exercises like conjugations and filling in the blanks and things like that. I talked about culturally specific things like the discrepancy in the definition of a notario público in Latin America versus the US, which unfortunately has led a lot of limited English proficient Latino clients to get bilked by immigration fraudsters. And that's just an important cultural thing that a lot of the litigants don't know. And then there would be a role-playing exercise at the end where I would pretend to be a client seeking immigration legal services, and they were a law clerk who had to interview the client in Spanish to learn about what legal issues they were facing and provide client interviewing and counseling. So yeah.
Nicole, did you have something to add?
I was just going to say, please do reach out to any of us if you have any questions. And thanks for attending.
Yeah. John, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
None for me. Just one point from Nicole's presentation, student absences. Thankfully, I can say that between the two of our programs, we usually do not have a whole lot of student absences. Everyone who signs up shows up, which is great. And hopefully that translates to them showing up to court hearings on time as well.
Thank you all so much, Nicole, John, Renu. This was excellent. And for those that are asking, the recording will be available tomorrow for you to rewatch or share with your colleagues who didn't have a chance to view. So thanks again for joining us, and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you.